I'm Haley Rhodes. I'm 29. And up until last year, some part of me, however small, however foolish, still clung to the hope that my dad might someday be proud of me. I'm the oldest of three. When I was little, I used to think that made me special, like I had a head start on everyone else. But in our family, being first didn't matter unless you were also the best. And best, in my dad's eyes, had a very narrow definition. Ivy League degrees, LinkedIn-worthy careers, six-figure salaries, polished smiles. Me. I didn't fit. I'm a writer. Not the kind with a publishing deal or a cushy editorial job, but the kind who freelances, ghostwrites blogs, scripts, and essays for people who usually forget your name once they pay your invoice. My rent gets paid, most months. I live in a studio apartment above a laundromat and make strong coffee at home to save money. But I love what I do. I love the blank page, the way words can move someone, the way storytelling can save your sanity. To my dad, though, I was nothing more than a cautionary tale. Don't be like Haley, he'd joke. She followed her passion into a ditch. And yet, despite all the times he dismissed me, ignored my work, or forgot to ask how I was really doing, I still hoped. I hoped that one day he'd see the strength it takes to build a life from scratch. That he'd understand that success looks different for everyone. That maybe, just maybe, he'd be proud. That hope died at my grandma's 75th birthday party. It was a big event. Held at a country club my dad couldn't stop name-dropping. White linen tablecloths, violin music playing in the background, the whole thing dripping with pretentiousness. I wore the nicest dress I owned, did my makeup 3 times to get it just right, and even practiced polite answers to the dreaded, "So what do you do these days?" question. The entire extended family was there. Cousins I hadn't seen since high school. Neighbors from our old block. Even Aunt Lisa, who once swore she'd never attend another Rhodes family gathering after the deviled egg incident of 2016. There were nearly 50 people in that room, buzzing with wine and old stories. Dinner was fine. A bit stiff. I sat across from Mia, my little sister, who was as sweet as ever, nervous about med school interviews but trying not to show it. Ethan sat next to Dad, his Rolex catching the light as he gestured mid-conversation. He'd just bought his second investment property and couldn't stop talking about passive income. I stayed quiet. I always did in these settings. It was easier than trying to insert myself into conversations where I always felt like an outsider in my own family. Then came the toast. Dad stood up, clinking his glass with a butter knife. Everyone quieted down, a few people already raising their glasses in anticipation. "I just want to say how grateful I am that we're all here," he began. "It's rare to get the whole family in one room like this. And I've been thinking a lot lately about legacy, about what we pass down." My stomach twisted. He turned to Ethan. "To my son Ethan, who just closed on his second property at 27. That's what I call vision and discipline." Applause. Proud nods. Ethan smiled like he'd just won an award. Then he looked at Mia. "And to Mia, who's about to embark on med school. A true healer in the making. Your mom and I couldn't be prouder." More clapping. Mia looked embarrassed but happy. Then he turned to me. "And then there's Haley." He actually paused like he had to dig deep to think of anything worth saying. "Well, she's still figuring things out," he finally said with a shrug and a chuckle. "Every family has a dreamer, right? We love you anyway, kiddo." There were a few laughs around the room, tight-lipped, polite, confused maybe, but none of it mattered. Because my heart was already in my throat and my face was burning hot. He said it so casually like it was nothing. Like publicly announcing that I was the family's disappointment was just a quirky family joke. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. I stared down at my wine glass, watching the candlelight flicker in the red liquid like it might tell me how to survive this moment. My mom gave me a soft, apologetic smile, but even she didn't speak up. I stood up quietly and walked out. No one followed me. No one stopped me. I made it to my car before the first tear fell. Then another. And another. I sobbed behind the steering wheel for what felt like an hour. Not because I was surprised, but because I wasn't. I had come hoping this time would be different. That this time maybe I'd be seen. But I wasn't. I was invisible. Or worse, pitted. I drove home in silence. The party still going on behind me. And somewhere between mile 3 and mile 12, something inside me broke. Or maybe it didn't break. Maybe it finally hardened. Because by the time I reached my apartment, the tears had stopped. I wasn't sad anymore. I was something else, something sharper. I realized then I would never be enough for him. Not on his terms. So maybe it was time to stop trying to win his game. Maybe it was time to play my own. He wanted a winner? Fine. I give him one. Just not in the way he expected. After that night something changed in me. It wasn't just anger, it was clarity. I stopped hoping for validation. I stopped pretending that the silence didn't hurt. I was done sitting quietly at a table where I was always served shame. And once I stopped caring about being the good daughter, I started remembering things I'd let slide for way too long. Especially things about Ethan. Now Ethan and I, we weren't close. Not really. Growing up we existed in parallel. He was the mathlete, the future CEO. I was the girl scribbling poems in her notebook at family barbecues. He liked structure. I liked freedom. He liked Dad's praise. I liked not needing it, at least I used to think I didn't. But about a year ago Ethan had reached out to me. Not for family bonding, of course he needed help. He was launching a new tech startup. Something AI-related, machine learning tools for real-time customer engagement. I nodded like I understood. I didn't, but whatever. He said he needed a strong written presence online. Blogs, investor decks, some social media content. I was between contracts and I figured it couldn't hurt to build rapport. Just temporary, he said. Once we secure funding, I'll bring on a full-time content manager. But I'll pay you, of course. Spoiler, he didn't. For 6 months, I wrote his blog posts, drafted investor letters, even ghostwrote a Medium article that got him some clout in the startup scene. He paid me once, $200 via Venmo, labeled favor. When I asked about actual payment, he said, "We're pre-revenue, Haley. You know how it is." I did. I also knew when someone was full of crap. But I let it go. Because at the time I still cared about being good. Being forgiving. Being family. After the reunion, though, I saw everything differently. I logged into the shared Google Drive I still had access to from the ghostwriting gig. I hadn't touched it in months. But curiosity tugged at me. I wondered what his perfect little empire looked like now. And what I found. It didn't just surprise me, it lit a fire under my spine. There were blog drafts, word-for-word copies of articles from niche tech sites. He'd copied, pasted, swapped a few phrases and published them under his name. There were pitch decks to investors with proprietary tech claims I knew for a fact he hadn't built. He'd barely passed AP Computer Science in high school. Then I found a Notion doc labeled Product Roadmap. Most of the AI pipeline language? It was lifted straight from a public GitHub repository. I checked the timestamps. The commits weren't his. He hadn't even forked the repo. He'd just stolen it. And that's when the bigger picture hit me. Ethan wasn't building a company. He was building an illusion. And Dad, Mr. Legacy and Respect and Discipline, had bought it without question. I stared at the screen for a long time. This was the same brother who once told me I was wasting my brain on emotions. The same guy who watched Dad humiliate me at the reunion and didn't say a word. I could have walked away. I really could have. It wasn't like Ethan's failure would magically fix our family dynamic. But it wasn't about revenge anymore. Not entirely. It was about balance. He got to wear the crown without ever earning it. And I was the one Dad kept pointing at with a frown and a smirk. Well, if Ethan was going to keep pretending he built something brilliant, he needed to be held accountable like an actual builder. So I took screenshots. Of the plagiarism. Of the pitch decks. Of the fake tech claims. I organized them into a clean little Google folder. Labeled everything by date. Cited sources. I even made a PDF summary. Then I found the investor group that had funded his seed round. On their website there was an anonymous tip line. For reporting fraud, misconduct or tech misrepresentation. I uploaded the folder and clicked submit. My hands shook. My heart pounded. Then I closed the laptop and went to bed. Took 3 weeks before anything happened. 3 weeks of radio silence. I almost convinced myself they'd ignored it. Or that maybe it wasn't a big enough deal. Then Ethan's LinkedIn changed. His job title shifted from founder and CEO to simply consultant. I texted Mia. Me, everything okay with Ethan? Mia, no idea. He's been super cagey lately. You'd think someone died. Then the news reached Dad. At first he assumed it was just a minor investor pullout. Startup stuff, he called it, like losing your main funding partner and legal rights to your tech was as common as a Starbucks line on Monday morning. But Ethan stopped showing up to family dinners. Stopped posting his flexes online. And one night, after too much wine and not enough discretion, my mom let it slip on a phone call. Your father's worried. Ethan's company might dissolve. There's talk of fraud. Did you hear anything about that? I kept my voice calm. Light. Wow. No, I hadn't. That night, I stared at my ceiling and let the silence sink in. This wasn't just a win. It was justice. For every time I'd been overlooked. For every time someone like me, someone quiet, emotional, imperfect, had been dismissed as weak. The irony? I didn't burn Ethan's business. His own lies did. I just handed the match to someone who could see the smoke. Thanksgiving used to be my favorite holiday. Before the judgment. Before the performance. Before family dinners turned into stage plays where Ethan played the genius, Mia played the sweetheart, and I was the forgettable third act. But this year, I was counting down to it. Not for the turkey or the fake smiles. I was waiting for the fallout. I hadn't spoken to Ethan since I submitted the file. His LinkedIn bio had quietly downgraded. No more Forbes 30 under 30 aspirations in his status updates. No more #startup life Instagram reels. It was like he vanished into the background of his own narrative. And for someone like Ethan, that had to sting more than the loss itself. Dad, of course, hadn't connected the dots. He just thought Ethan was going through something and needed space. The way my father saw it, Ethan's worth was so hardwired into his identity that failure simply wasn't a possibility. Me. I was just Haley, still doing that writing thing. I had no intention of revealing myself. I wasn't in this for the confession or the glory. I just wanted to sit across from him at the table and watch the golden sun's armor finally crack. Thanksgiving morning came. It was overcast, cold, California's version of gloom. I pulled into my parents' driveway a little after noon, carrying a pie I didn't make and a calm I definitely didn't feel. Inside, the house looked exactly the same. The same cinnamon candles. The same fake gratitude signs from Hobby Lobby. The same nervous energy in the air that no one ever acknowledged. Mia greeted me at the door with a hug. She looked tired. More tired than someone applying to med school should. There were shadows under her eyes and a tightness in her voice when she said, "Glad you came." Ethan was already there. He sat at the kitchen island, nursing a tumbler of whiskey like it was water. No smile. No witty banter. He barely nodded when I walked in. Dad was bustling around, loud and overcompensating. Look at this table, huh? Family's all together again. Just like it should be. I bit my tongue. We sat down for dinner. Passed mashed potatoes, cranberry sauce, practiced small talk. Ethan said maybe 5 words. I watched Dad shoot him glances, like he was waiting for Ethan to snap out of it and become the show pony again. And then, somewhere between the second helping of stuffing and the third refill of wine, Dad raised his glass. That damn toast again. Every year he did this. And every year it was a performance. I braced myself. I just want to say, he began, that I'm proud, so proud, of the people my children are becoming. He looked at Mia. Mia, your compassion and drive? You're going to make an incredible doctor. No doubt in my mind. Then he turned to Ethan. And Ethan. That's when Ethan slammed his glass down. Hard. It echoed across the table and silenced everyone. No, he said. His voice was hoarse. I agree. Don't you dare do the whole speech. Dad froze. His eyes narrowed. What's the matter with you? Ethan stood up. His face was red. Jaw clenched. You want to know what's the matter? My company's dead. The investors pulled out. I've got a cease and desist from a developer I didn't even know existed, and I'm this close to getting sued for intellectual property fraud. The room went still. You could have heard a fork drop. What are you talking about? Dad asked, suddenly quieter. I'm saying your favorite son blew it. The genius. The prodigy. I was full of crap. And I got caught. Ethan laughed bitterly. And you know what's worse? I knew I could get away with it. Because you believed in me no matter what. Even when I didn't earn it. He looked at me then. Just for a second. And I knew. He'd figured it out. Maybe not the exact how, but the who. His eyes didn't say hate. They said hurt. Betrayal. And maybe something else, relief? Dad looked like someone had punched him in the gut. He sat down slowly, lips slightly parted, but no words came. Mia stood up and excused herself to the bathroom. I followed her 5 minutes later. Found her sitting on the closed toilet lid, head in her hands. Are you okay? I asked gently. She looked up, tears in her eyes. Did you know any of this? I paused. I knew he was hiding things, I said honestly. I didn't know how bad it was. She exhaled shakily. I hate what he did. But I also hate that I feel sorry for him. It's like none of us were allowed to be human around Dad. We had to be something else. Impressive, perfect, shiny. I sat beside her on the edge of the bathtub. We still are human. That's the whole point. We didn't return to the table right away. When we did, the tension was still thick, but no one said anything more. The plates were mostly cleared. The wine bottle was empty. Before I left, Dad stopped me at the door. Did you know this would happen? He wasn't angry. Just tired. For the first time in years, he looked older than I remembered. I met his eyes. I knew something had to break eventually. You can't build a family on competition and expect it to stand. He didn't reply. I walked to my car. Closed the door. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like the outsider. I felt like the only one in that house who had finally made peace with the truth. The thing no one tells you about revenge is that it doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes it arrives quietly. Like fog rolling in, slow, cold, and undeniable. After Thanksgiving, I didn't speak to my father for weeks. No check-ins. No guilt texts. No fake concern. He was probably licking his wounds, trying to figure out how his golden child had turned to rust right in front of him. I imagined him pacing his study, rewinding every conversation, wondering where it all went wrong. But it hadn't gone wrong. It had just finally gone honest. As for me, I got busy doing what I do best. Writing. I channeled the years of silence, the quiet humiliations, the smirks, the maybe if you just tried harder moments into words. And a truth. I wrote an essay titled, When Your Father Only Loves the Winner. I didn't name names. No need to. I simply told the story of growing up in a home where love had conditions. Where, I'm proud of you, was reserved for straight A's, clean resumes, and LinkedIn profiles. I talked about what it meant to be the daughter who didn't check the boxes. The one who chose meaning over money. Art over ambition. Heart over hustle. I posted it to my small Substack. A few hundred readers. Some friends. A couple of exes who probably hate subscribed. I thought it might resonate with a few people. I didn't expect it to explode. Within 48 hours, it had gone viral. Shared across Twitter, LinkedIn, even Facebook groups for adult children of narcissists. Comments poured in from people who said I'd written the thing they never had the words for. Grown men. Mothers. Estranged siblings. It hit a nerve. One message stood out. It came from an editor at a mid-sized publishing house. Hi Haley. I read your piece and it moved me. We're looking for authentic voices in nonfiction. Have you ever considered writing a book? I read the email 5 times. Then I cried. Not because I needed the validation, but because for the first time, someone saw me not as a failure. Not as a side character in someone else's highlight reel. But as the main story. By January I had a book deal. Advance money. Real money. The kind that meant I could stop taking soulless ghostwriting gigs from people like Ethan. I kept it quiet at first. I didn't post the announcement. I didn't brag. I let the work speak for itself. But news travels. Especially when you grew up in a family like mine, where image is everything and success only matters when it's something they can brag about in golf groups. One afternoon my phone rang. I almost didn't answer. But something in me said, pick it up. His voice was quiet. Hesitant. Haley. Hey. Boz. I read your piece. The one everyone's talking about. I waited. It made me think. A lot. About how I treated you. About what I pushed you to become. I didn't say anything. You were always strong, he added. I just didn't know how to see it. Not when it didn't look like what I expected. That part almost got me. Almost. But then he said, I guess you showed me, huh? You proved me wrong. And that's when I realized he still didn't get it. This wasn't about proving him wrong. It was about finally being right for myself. I cleared my throat. Every family has a dreamer, right? He chuckled lightly, unsure. Yeah, I guess. Well, turns out dreaming pays better than pretending. I didn't wait for a response. I hung up. 2 months later I did a podcast interview about the book. The host asked me what inspired it. I told the truth. It wasn't revenge, I said. It was reclaiming the narrative. I'd spent so long being cast as the failure I almost believed it. Until I realized that survival isn't failure. Softness isn't weakness. And silence? That's just a dam waiting to break. The host leaned in. So what would you say to your dad now? I smiled. Nothing. The story's not for him anymore. Today I live in a brighter apartment. One with bookshelves full of my stories. I have readers who wait for my words. I have quiet mornings with coffee and peace. And I have something my dad never valued but I finally do. Self-worth that isn't built on anyone else's approval. Me and I talk every week. She left med school before it even started. Turns out she wanted to be a therapist, not a surgeon. She says watching me break free gave her permission to question everything too. Ethan? We haven't spoken since that Thanksgiving. I heard he's working for someone else now. No more companies. No more code. Maybe he's learning how to live without applause. Maybe not. But me. I'm writing my second book. And this time, the dedication reads, to every daughter told she was too sensitive, too soft, too small to matter. This story is proof that you always did. Thank you so much for listening to my story. Your support means everything. If this story touched you or made you think, please subscribe to our channel for more real, powerful stories.